Hello and welcome to the Tough Girl Podcast, a 3-time award-winning show that aims to motivate and inspire you while increasing the amount of female role models in the media, especially in relation to adventure and physical challenges. I'm your host, Sarah Williams. If you're passionate about adventure, challenge and learning from women who have overcome obstacles and achieved remarkable things, then this is the podcast for you. Every Tuesday at 7 a.m, new episodes go live featuring incredible women who share their stories, insights and tips to help you achieve your dreams and goals. You can support the Tough Girl mission by signing up as a patron. Visit Patreon, patreon.com/Tough Girl Podcast. Keep listening until the very end as I share more information about what's going on with me with Tough Girl Challenges, give shout outs and recommend other Tough Girl Podcast episodes. More information can be found at toughgirlchallenges.com.
My name is Becky Wandell. I am a teacher. I'm a writer. I'm a solo traveler. I'm a volunteer. I'm a tour guide. I started my life in the Midwest, in the central part of the United States. And I always knew I wanted to live near mountains. I had pretty adventurous parents. And so we would travel a lot. And I spent a lot of time in the summertime living outside and camping in my tent. And I just really wanted to do more of that. So after college, I moved west to climb some mountains and work for the Forest Service and work environmental education programs. And I really love that. But ultimately, I found my love for teaching. And so I became a teacher. I was an elementary school teacher for over 18 years. And I really had a wonderful career and a wonderful life. And I had a husband and I had a job and a mortgage. And like, I called myself like that was my normal period, normal like everybody else. But, you know, as sometimes as life happens, the rug gets pulled out from under you and you have to pivot and life changes. And I had to figure out what I really wanted to do. And there were some things on a list that I had made of what I really wanted to do in life. And some of those things were to travel freely and backpack around South America and live abroad and learn another language. And I always wanted to join the Peace Corps and serve others. And so at 47, I headed off for the Peace Corps and I served in Ecuador. I learned Spanish. I lived with a wonderful family down there that really taught me a lot about really living life intentionally and generosity and kindness. And I just realized that I didn't need to be a part of I call it the gerbil wheel of life, of always trying to earn money for more and more and more. And so I ended up just staying in South America. I loved my life down there. I love traveling. I love asking questions and learning about other people and cultures. And I love just slow traveling and being intentionally a part of other cultures and really connecting with people, especially women around the world. And so I did that for several years. And then I realized I really love trekking and hiking, and I've always been a hiker. And so I decided to get back to a dream that I'd always had for many, many years since I was quite young. And I decided to hike the Pacific Crest Trail. So I came back last year in the United States at age 55, and I hiked the Pacific Crest Trail from Mexico to Canada. And after doing that, I really realized that I could do anything in my life. I gained a tremendous amount of confidence. And I decided that I really want to continue to slow travel more, but I always wanted to be a tour guide too. So now I'm a tour guide in Alaska, a place that I always thought I should have been from. And I love doing that. And I make some money during a few of the months of the season. And then I get to travel slowly and intentionally around the world the rest of the season. And so I'm just out here living the dream and being the best Becky I can be.
Oh, I love that. Being the best Becky that you can be. Absolutely. You mentioned that there was like a pivot. Would you like to share more about that point in time? Was that when you were 47?
Yeah. I was going through a horribly difficult divorce at that time. It was devastating. And I remember there were days that I could just barely get out of bed and function. And I was really, really struggling. And there was one particular day that I couldn't make it. And I called my friend and asked her to be a substitute teacher to go in for my class and take care of my class at the time. And I just couldn't face kids and responsibility. And I sat in my bed all day crying with my cats around me and drawing and journaling and trying to figure out what was going to happen with my life. And during this time, I remembered thinking about a box of letters that I had. These letters had been written by my ex-husband and I when we were living apart in the early stages of our love life, and several years, many, many years before. And we had been living long distance. And so we wrote these long love letters to each other. And when we finally got back together, we put those letters together, and we've been schlepping those letters in a box from house to house to house to house for a decade since. And, you can't get rid of your origin story of your relationship, right? And so, but I hadn't read these letters in a very, very long time. And I went with my, bathrobe on and tear streaked face, and I sat on the cold, hard wood floor, and I pulled those box of letters out of the back of that closet, and I started reading them, my letters to him, and with this young 22-year-old voice of hope and love, and so idealistic and so confident. And she was so wise. And she would talk in these love letters about all of her dreams to travel and to go and to serve others and to live a full life. And then he would write back and say, no, we can do all of that later. Let's fulfill my dreams first. Let's put me through graduate school, and let's put, all of his letters were about him. And I followed, that was the generation that I was from. That's what you do. You compromise in relationships. And so again and again, there was that push and pull in our relationship of things that I always wanted to do and I always dreamed of. And he would always put it on hold and say, no, we'll do it later after we fulfill all my dreams first. And here I am, decades later, sitting on the floor, reading this and listening to the wisdom of my 20-year-old self. And she was there and she was strong. And I realized she was still inside of me, and I needed to go find her again. And so I jumped up and I ran back to my bed and I grabbed my computer and I started typing out a list of all the things that those letters had said I wanted to do back then, and all the things that I knew that I had since dreamed about. And I typed this long list and I said, well, darn it, I better get started. I'm not getting any younger. I better get started on the list. And so I looked at it and I said, the first thing I'm going to do is join the Peace Corps. That's what I always wanted to do. So I cleared everything off, opened up the Peace Corps application. I applied that afternoon. Within a few weeks, I knew I was going. And that was it. I was ready to get back to the Becky that I knew that I had inside of me, that I always was there.
You used the word compromise. And the word that I would use, which I think women have been doing for too long, is sacrificing. You're sacrificing your dreams, your hopes, your passions, your ideas, and under the umbrella of, oh, we're compromising. Mm-hmm. And that's an incredibly powerful moment, not only, taking the time to read those letters, but to remember who you were at 22, that confidence, those dreams, that sort of that hope, that love, and actually think, hold on, what do Becky, what am I going to do? And obviously the Peace Corps was something very, very powerful for you. And, straight away, and I love this, taking massive action, which is so powerful. Can you share more about the Peace Corps? Because I feel as though this is like a very American thing.
It is.
What is the Peace Corps? What's involved? Like, how much choice or flexibility is there when it comes to choosing like what you get to do? Do you need to have certain qualifications to do it? Is it paid? Is it volunteer? What does that look like, that process of doing that at 47?
Right. The Peace Corps it was started back in the 1960s by our President Kennedy. And the whole idea is that the American citizens are going off to for 3 months of cultural training and language training, and then 24 months of literally giving their skilled labor to others for free. So you don't make any money during it, but you do make a stipend that will cover your housing and your food costs. So you basically live for free for 2 years, over 2 years. I remember growing up in the 70s, it was on the commercials a lot on TV that was always about the Peace Corps, the toughest job you'll ever love. And I always said to myself, I want to do that. I want to go live in another country. As a young age, I knew very clearly I wanted to go help others and learn about others and live in other people's homes and integrate with them and learn about their culture. and do what I could to help them. So the Peace Corps was just something I always wanted to do. And of course, I had applied when I was 20, but that cute boy talked me out of it again. And I just always held that in my head as something that would be like the first thing that I would do when I could have time for myself. I would give myself to others because that's just what I'm about. That's the way I was raised. So the Peace Corps is skilled labor in other countries, and you may work in the education sector teaching English or teaching languages. You may work in agricultural sector teaching sustainability and environmental practices. You may work with families and children that need help. You may work in the health sector for vaccines or helping in clinics or things like that, nutrition around the world. They work in impoverished countries around the world to bring goodwill to those countries. But really, the real gift is that as a Peace Corps volunteer, I learned so much about myself. I learned so much about another culture and other people. And the idea is that I bring back to the United States, and I share that compassion and that understanding with the people that are in my life here in the United States.
And how is the language learning side of things? Because I wish I honestly, I don't know. I think it's probably just like a British thing, but
Right.
because obviously everyone does end up speaking English, but my languages and my pronunciation are just
It's
horrendous.
really
Like
hard.
I'm
It's
I'm very good at like basic French, like the bonjour, ça va, oui, ça va bien. That sounds awesome. And Spanish, like hola, buenos dias. But that is it. How was language learning for you? And I suppose also spending 2 years in Ecuador. I'd love to hear more about, like the living situation, a language learning, and what it was for like, being 47 over there as well.
right. So language learning was really, really hard for me. As a teacher, I was in Portland, Oregon, and I had a lot of students of Hispanic, Latino descent in my classroom. And so I had been going to language classes for actually several years, trying to learn some basic language that I could talk to my students at their conferences or help them out with homework or behavior, talk to the parents of the students. So I thought I had a basic learning of understanding of Spanish. And I was very proud of that when I arrived there. And then I realized I could understand nobody and nothing. It was very disheartening that my Spanish did not serve me well at all down there just because it was so much faster. It was in completely different context, and people would walk up to you and start to say something, and I have no idea the context, and it was impossible to understand. And it took me a lot of language classes. I got a tutor down there on the side, but ultimately I moved in with a family. I advertised myself to like adopta una gringuita. I wanted a family to kind of adopt me down there and take me in as almost like an exchange student and really spend time with me. And I wanted to make sure they had kids so that I'd play games with them and they'd spend time with me, and because that's the way you learn. And I found an amazing family with my host mom and dad, which we laugh because they're a little younger than I am, and then the kids, and they just absolutely took me in, and I lived their life every day, cooking with them, eating with them, going to all of their soccer games with them, going to festivals and celebrations, and they were very much modern Ecuadorians, but they also had a lot of indigenous heritage. And so they would go to a lot of indigenous festivals, and they would use some indigenous medicines, some plants and different things like that. And so I learned a lot from them. They integrated me into every minute of their life. But mostly it was every day I would sit with the mom, Margarita. We would have a cup of tea at the table in the morning, and she would slowly talk to me and give me context and correct my Spanish and then ask me comprehension questions after she had explained things for a while and helped me really understand. And so slowly, it was a year, it was a whole year of living there before I felt like I could actually have a conversation with somebody in the street and walk away and realize, oh my gosh, I just did that whole conversation in Spanish. Like that was amazing. So it finally was a turning point, but it took a long time as an older person. And an older person being in the Peace Corps is a little different. They do have the vast majority of Peace Corps volunteers go kind of after college, before graduate school or something like that, to kind of find a new way in life or new direction. And there's very little mid-career people like myself. So that was a little bit more difficult to convince people that that I worked with and people that I served with, that yeah, to fit in and be a part of things.
This is obviously, something that you have dreamed about, and then, you've taken massive action to get out there. And then obviously, you're learning a huge, you obviously got the skill set, like with being a teacher and, all of that knowledge, which you'll be able to use. But, did you feel lonely? Did you feel lost? Or did you feel as though this was your right path and you just needed to stick it out, if that makes sense?
Yeah, there were definitely lonely moments. It was really hard. Before I left, my mom had passed away, and my dad was, I knew, back in the United States alone. But he was very clear with me, you have always wanted to do this, you need to go. And my siblings were really clear with me, don't worry about this, we're going to take care of dad. And he ended up dying while I was there. And that was really hard. So of course there were really lonely moments that I just felt like I can't communicate completely in this foreign language. I didn't have, even after 2 years, I didn't have all of the vocabulary I needed to really have an intimate conversation with somebody. And there were times it was really lonely. I wasn't able to really express myself. But as far as being on the right path, I knew it all along. That was exactly what I was supposed to be doing. Just maybe 20 years too late, or maybe not, maybe right on time. It was definitely the thing to do for me. And I found it so empowering as I would start to, during my weekends or different days off, I could start to extend my circle farther and farther. And I would just take local buses and I would meet the greatest people that would help me along and traveling. And, oh, you should go here and you should go see this, or you should come to my house for dinner tonight. And the Ecuadorian people were so kind and wonderful. And I always found that I was less lonely if I just jumped on a bus and went somewhere because I would always find more people that wanted to interact with me. And I made so many wonderful friends and I just gained so much confidence. And I'll tell you, as an older woman, I think it was easier for me to travel because as a younger woman in these machismo type of countries where you might get whistles or harassed or anything like that, being a little bit older, they called me a senora. Now, of course, I didn't like that at first, but I figured out really quickly that that came with a lot of respect. And so they would offer their seats on the bus to me, or they would make sure that I got to my destination and walk me, a few blocks to make sure I got there safely. And so, I mean, I'm not old and decrepit, but that senora made it so that I wasn't hassled by the younger men any longer. And it made it so that I was more free to travel and free to move. And I gained a lot of confidence. And I actually felt very, very safe in Ecuador. And then since, as I've traveled all throughout South America, slow traveling with my backpack.
So after you finished your 24 months in the Peace Corps, what was next for you? Is that when you stayed on and went traveling around South America, or did you go back to the States first?
Well, unfortunately, there was this thing called the pandemic that sort of interrupted a few things. I was actually supposed to be in the Peace Corps for a third year. I had applied and it was going to be extended for a third year. But then the pandemic hit and they closed all the borders. And so I did come back to the United States for about 9 months. And that's when the borders of Mexico started opening up. And I figured out that I could just go on my own. I could wear a mask. I could follow the rules, the safety rules of these different countries, but I could just keep going. And so I did. So I first went to Mexico and I actually volunteered to build a school down there. I did that for about 4 months in the south of Oaxaca, and that was an amazing experience. Then from there, I did find a job in a school in Colombia, and I went and did that for a while. And after that was finished, that contract was finished, then I thought, well, I need to get to know Colombia. So I packed my pack and started really traveling and volunteering my way around Colombia. And when I say that I'm volunteering, I find a lot of my volunteer opportunities on websites like Workaway or Wolfing and those kind of sites. You can create a profile and offer your services, what you can offer, and other people that want some help maybe in their location that they can invite you to their home and they provide room and board as long as you work 20 to 25 hours a week for them, and they'll help you integrate and help you do different things. So I worked on a coffee farm in Colombia. I worked in hostels And then I thought, well, I really like this. I like being able to travel more cheaply, more intentionally, living with some different local families and learning about different trades. And so I just kept heading south. And really, I always wanted to get to Patagonia. Like that's, of course, on every hiker's bucket list, right? And I'm a hiker to my core. And so I said, I want to go to Patagonia. So I booked my flight to Buenos Aires and I just kept heading south. And I definitely stay in hostels along the way, but I travel for a couple months, see lots of different things, go on treks, go do what I play a tourist, whatever I want to do. But then I stop for a few months and I work in a place. I worked in a organic garden in Argentina. I worked in a bakery. That was so fun to learn how to make croissants. And I worked in a hostel and a bed and breakfast. I worked in a nature center. And so I just volunteer my way. I'm in different places so I can stay in a place intentionally for a couple months and really get to know some of the community members and learn more about their culture and traditions. And then I get my backpack on again and I head to some more locations and just travel my way. So I spent 2 years down in Patagonia, traveling around and just living my best life. And then after that, I decided to come back to the United States and I said, okay, I've been doing all this trekking and wonderful exploring, and now it's time to do the biggest trek of all, the Pacific Crest Trail.
So had you been thinking about the Pacific Crest Trail from sort of like your early 20s? Was that something that you wrote down on that list? Or was this sort of,
Yeah.
oh, it was brilliant.
When I was working for the Forest Service in Oregon, we would go up and do trail maintenance on the trail or do some different interpretive work. And I always looked longingly down the trail and said, wow, that way's Mexico. And wow, this other way's Canada. And what would it be like to see the whole darn thing? Yeah. So that had been in my, I guess, in my dream list. And I guess after I started just really hiking a lot down in Patagonia and really doing a lot of trekking, I thought, yeah, I'm ready. I could do this.
What made you feel ready? Because sometimes was that a confidence thing? Was it a timing thing? Was it a financial thing? Was it, I don't know, was there like a spark or something where it's just like, actually, you know what, it's now or never, like this is the perfect time to do it?
I think it was a little bit of all of that. I was feeling healthy. I was feeling strong. And, when you get to these ages, you never know what the next week is even going to bring. So you just got to grab life and ride the adventure, right? And I thought I better do this now before I can't anymore. And I remember there were other times that I had thought about doing it, but it was the wrong time to start planning. It was it was in the middle of the hiking season, or it wasn't the time to start really kind of thinking about it. But when I was in Argentina, I remembered it was about September that the idea sprang into my head again. And I thought, yeah, that could happen by next March. I have enough time between now and March or April to be able to start really organizing all of the different things I needed to do to get ready for it, not only my equipment, but in physical conditioning, as well as just getting my gear together. And so I felt like that was the right time frame to be able to get everything together and be able to start it. And I didn't necessarily have anything else I had to do. I just thought, I've been slow traveling around other countries. Maybe it's time to slow travel across my own country.
Did you have any concerns or fears before you started out on the trail?
No. At that pivot point with those letters, I have been gaining so much confidence ever since then. And one thing that I really have done is that I let fear go. I don't fear anything anymore. I've already hit bottom. I've hit the worst thing that could possibly happen to a married woman that was happy and in love. I have already hit bottom. I can't get any worse. So my life is all up from here. And I've come to really, really believe that if you're on the right track, the universe is going to look out for you and you're going to be okay. So I don't have any fear. I don't have anything to fear anymore. Sure, was I going to maybe hurt myself on the trail? Probably. And I was going to figure it out when I got there. When I got to that point, there was no point in thinking about it ahead of time, right? Or was I going to be hungry or cold or exhausted? sobbing in my tent some nights? Probably, but I'll deal with it when I get there. There was no reason to be anxious about anything ahead of time. I guess South America travel has really taught me that you have to live in the moment. And when an obstacle confronts you, you have to pivot and figure it out then. But there's no point in worrying about it ahead of time.
How soon did you get your trail name? And would you like to share your trail name?
My trail name came pretty early. It was in the first probably 40 miles. So I wore these bright orange linen pants on the trail. Like, I mean, this is the craziest thing to wear hiking. They were like fancy, what do you call those? Big, flowy, flappy pants that were super fancy. Like you would wear these with a high heel pair of shoes and a fancy top. But I found them at a mercado in Ecuador for $5. And I love these pants. And I decided that since they were light and cool and linen, the wind would be able to go through them, but they would keep the torturous sun off my legs through the hot, hot desert of Southern California. And I also knew that there was a lot of spiny plants along the way. People always talked about in the blogs and in the research I did that you're going to get your legs all cut up if you wear shorts in the desert. You have to wear long pants. And I just thought that they would mark me on the trail as somebody really fun and somebody to remember. And they did right away. And so I got all kinds of people that said, "Oh, you should be Hot Pants," and I was like, "No, I don't think that's the right name for me." And I got lots of other versions of that. And finally, somebody came along with Spicy Pants, and I said, well, "Let's just cut it to Spice," and that's where it stopped. And that's where it came. Yeah, the pants didn't survive past the desert; they got thrown away. They were pretty shredded after that, but they worked perfectly through the desert section of California for me.
Amazing. And after the desert comes the section which a lot of hikers can talk about. I've never done the PCT, but from speaking to people who've done it, the mountains, the Sierra Mountains, and and the snowfall and the crossings, and to be fair, there are quite dangerous bits. People have lost their life on the PCT, so
yes,
it is a hike which you have to respect, basically, like heading out. It is the wilderness. Talk us through some of maybe your challenging sections that maybe that you sort of struggled with, whether it was physical, mental, emotional, whether it was cold, lack of food. What was your challenging sections? And there might not have been.
No, there was. But it was the desert. It was the desert. I really do not need to go hiking in the desert again in my life. 700 miles on the PCT definitely cured that. It was so hot. It was so hot and miserable, step after step, and days of no shade and long, long water carries. And you're just dusty and dirty and grimy all the time. And I had taken one of those super ultralight umbrellas for shade. And of course it broke the first day. And it was really, really difficult. Now, agreed, the desert was also incredibly beautiful. The flower blooms, spring in the desert was this amazing place to be. And I am very honored that I got to do that. But yes, the desert was really hard. And there was one moment that I remember I got to a high ridge and I had cell service and I was just feeling so despondent. And I got onto my Facebook account and I wrote I wrote a plea essentially that said, "I am out here killing myself. I need some pep talk. I need some positive inspiration. I need some love, people. This is really, really hard." And I shut my phone and headed off for a couple more days. And then at another high ridge line, I got cell service again. And I opened up my phone and I thought, sure, there'd be 4 or 5 messages maybe from my closest friends. I had over 80 messages from friends from all over the world in English and in Spanish. And they were all telling me things like, "You got this. You absolutely can do this. My money's on you. You're going to make it. This is completely in your capacity." I had cousins that told me my parents would be so proud of me and that I was from a long lineage of very strong farm women. And this was a piece of cake. And I had old high school teachers tell me that they remembered my indomitable spirit and I was going to make it through. And just letter after letter after letter I received on my Facebook account. And I sat there on the top of that mountain and sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. Just so much relief. And when I got up, I felt so much better. And I knew then I was going to make it to Canada. Put my shoulder pack on and hike 20 more miles to the next water source. It was a long ways. Yeah. Yeah.
It's almost amazing that you can end up sometimes being in your own, well, you're on your own journey, and so you can be in your own head with your own thoughts and feelings. And sometimes you probably forget the people who are, just maybe just watching or, following along with the journey. Maybe, not they don't, sometimes people don't necessarily contact you all the time, but you don't realize what an impact that you're having on them. And then suddenly when you do need that little bit of extra help and motivation, it's like, boom, it's like, wow, actually, like, a lot of people are invested in you. They believe in you, and that you doing this is inspiring them. And that absolutely. So, because I've also had like those low moments, and how powerful to get all of those messages just popping in your phone. And yeah, like, pack back on, next 20 miles, getting it done, because it's persevering. You do have these high points, but it's also like the low points, and day after day, it's not easy to keep on going.
Right. It's the mental game that really is the hardest to conquer. It's not the body, it's the mental game. And I was going to tell you, there was one more thing that I did for myself. It was a tip that I found on how to hike the Pacific Crest Trail website kind of thing. What I did was I wrote a letter to myself. And this letter had 3 parts. The first part was basically, I am through hiking the Pacific Crest Trail because. The second part was, when I successfully through hike the PCT, I will. And the third one is, if I give up on the PCT, I will. And so you can apply this to any hard thing that you do in your life. I am doing this really hard thing because when I successfully finish it, what will life be like? And if I give up on this really hard thing, what will my life be like? And I wrote this very, very heartfelt, vulnerable letter to myself. I printed it out and I carried it with me. And I always knew that that letter was not going to let me quit. And I only needed to read it twice on the whole trail.
You mentioned as well that hiking the PCT was where, like, your confidence really sort of came in. And I say because I had a similar on the Appalachian Trail, where it's almost like it's just like this inner confidence, where it's almost, I don't know, for me it was just like I suddenly felt like, oh, I'm good with me. Like, I know I'm good with me. It doesn't matter what other people think. It's like, no. I know myself. I know what I'm doing. It's like, it can be quite sort of powerful. You've obviously had these key moments out there. I suppose, when did it change for you? Was it that moment, like reading those letters, or is it another point where I don't know, the self-confidence just blossomed, or you were like, oh no, hold on, I am actually confident. This is, this is the new me now. I'm not that broken individual that, going through a divorce and, you going through the lowest of the low back when you were 47. You've had so many years of the Peace Corps and traveling and slow travel and hiking all these incredible hikes. But yeah, sorry, I've gone off on a bit of a tangent. But did you know what I'm asking there with that question?
Yeah. I think, though, that my real confidence came from serving in the Peace Corps and doing something so hard. I mean, you're living completely in a different culture, working completely in a different mindset, and having to communicate in a totally different language that is really, everything is different. And I gained a lot of confidence in that experience. And then when I started slow traveling around the world and being able to just solve my own problems as I went and figure it out and take care of myself, I gained an enormous amount of confidence. And so the PCT was a physical challenge. All the other challenges I had was much more of emotional and cultural. The PCT was, wow, can I really push my body that hard? Can I make that happen? And I prepared really well. I'm a planner and a preparer. So in those months from when I got my original lottery ticket, you have to apply and get a lottery ticket to be able to through hike the trail because it's that popular. And when I won my lottery ticket and I got my start date for April 7th. I knew I was going, and that all happened in October of the previous year. And so I had those months to start preparing. And so I started really physically training seriously. Like I was pulling tires down gravel roads in Ecuador. I was running up mountains in Argentina. I was physically doing a lot to train with that. I was consulting friends that were trainers, and I was consulting a lot of YouTube videos of how to get prepared for this trail. And so I was physically doing that, but I was also doing things like taking a wilderness first aid class so that I knew how to take care of myself. I was doing all kinds of research on how do you cross a raging river by yourself? How do you use an ice axe? How do you identify poisonous plants and poisonous snakes in the desert and things like that? I was researching a lot about my nutrition. I knew that as an older hiker, I needed to do this my way. I needed to have really good nutrition. I was not going to be able to live on gas station beef jerky and gummy worms this entire trail like a 20-year-old might. I needed really good nutrition in my resupply boxes. I needed to have really good protein. I needed to sleep a lot. I know that I like to sleep. I needed a lot of rest. That meant going to bed earlier than most of my hiking partners, which means I didn't really stay with trail families very much. I needed to do the trail how I could do it, like how, or else I wasn't going to get to the end. And so I did a lot of this research and a lot of preparing and planning. And so by the time that I finally got my equipment together, my body was in shape. I was ready. I was back in the United States. I was putting my food boxes together. I was very, very confident that I could make this happen.
You also learned something quite interesting about your last name. Would you like to share that?
Yeah. It was towards the end of the hike, and I met a woman from the Netherlands. And she was another hiker. And I had actually met her way back in the desert section. And then I met her again in Washington State. I met up with her on the trail. And she pronounced, we were trading phone numbers. And so I told her my last name, which, usually you just go by trail names. So nobody would know your last name. But I was giving her my phone number. Gave her my last name, and she pronounced it correctly, Wandell. And I said, most people kind of put the emphasis on a different syllable. And she pronounced it correctly. And I said, oh, well, that would make sense that you would pronounce it correctly because you're from the Netherlands and this name is a Dutch name. And she said, do you know what it means? I said, it has a meaning? What does it mean? And she said, if you take off the L, Wandell means I hike. Yeah, I hike. That was me.
Wow.
That's pretty great.
And I love the fact that you never knew that before. And then suddenly it's like you're on the biggest hike of your life. Like you're almost finishing your 2000. How long is the PCT now? Is that 2,400 miles?
2,600 miles.
2000, oh my God.
I didn't complete every step. There were fire breaks in the way. But yes, I got from Mexico to Washington.
That is absolutely incredible. And then I don't know if you want to share this, but you actually sent me a very powerful little video.
Yeah.
Would you like to share a little bit about that?
Yeah. So when I hiked the PCT, I didn't listen to earbuds. I didn't have my earbuds in very often. I wanted to hear the bird song. I wanted to hear people coming up behind me. I wanted to hear animal noises. I wanted to think. I spent all of those miles, step after step, thinking about life and just being intentional in that place. I mean, I hiked the PCT because I wanted to see the beauty and be intentional in that place. So I rarely wore my earbuds. But there were some hills, like colossal steep climbs, long several miles that I thought, okay, I need some inspirational message to get me up this mountain. And oftentimes I would turn to Tough Girl podcasts. And would listen to these podcasts. And at the end of the podcast, you always say, give it your all, give it 100%, because I believe in you. And I can't tell you how many times up some very steep hills I would say, Sarah believes in me. Sarah believes in me. I can do this. And so at the end, when I was getting near the end of the trail, I decided that I wanted to make a video of myself getting to the final terminus. And I wanted to say that finally I was a tough girl because I had finally done this incredibly difficult physical achievement. And so I did. I made this video that encourages others to get off the couch and get active and follow your dreams and live life. And because I believe in you, and I say in it, I did it. I finally did it. I finally hiked the PCT, and I'm a tough girl now. And so I sent that video to you to let you know that your words do inspire a lot of other women out here like me.
Oh, which made me so happy. And you've also, you've got a blog and you are on social media. Would you like to share where people can connect with you, where they can read about your slow travel, your adventures, watch the video, and learn more about your PCT and Peace Corps? Where should they go?
Yeah, so I do write a blog. It's something that I do for myself to help me learn and understand. I kind of fancy myself kind of an investigative reporter. So I ask lots of questions and write thematic stories about the different cultures that I'm in to kind of teach other people, because I'm always a teacher. To teach other people about the places I've been. So I write this blog, and it's called onthewingadventures.com. I kind of use that as like, somebody that wears theirself on their sleeves, always just living life freely on the wing. Then on my Instagram, it's Becky's On the Wing Adventures.
Becky, I'll make sure I put the links to your blog and to your social media so that people can follow along and connect with you. But I'd love for you to have the final words of advice and wisdom for other women out there who are maybe going through their own pivot, own difficult time, a big change is happening in their life. Words of advice that you would like to pass on. But please don't say just do it. You can take that in any other direction though.
The first thing I want to say is give up the fear. I really do believe that fear limits so much of what we do in our life, especially women, because we do have to worry about our safety. But if you could just give up the fear, you're going to be okay. There are so many good people in the world, and they're going to take care of you. And you're smart and you're strong. And I really learned that I'm stronger than I ever thought I was. And I didn't have to wait so long to help make my dreams come true. And so just give up the fear and dream big. If you have the capacity to dream something, then I really, really believe you have the capacity to make it happen. Dream big, go big, get going, start planning, take a step, and just give up the fear. You're going to be okay.
I love that. Thank you, Becky. Give up the fear. Becky, thank you so much for coming on the Tough Girl podcast and sharing more about your journey and adventures. It's been amazing to speak to you.
Thank you so much.
Hey, tribe. Really hope you enjoyed that episode with Becky. And everything that we have talked about today will be available in the show notes at toughgirlchallenges.com. Now, one of the things that I did at the end of 2025 was to reach out to the Tough Girl Tribe, which is my Facebook community, just to say, look, I'd love to hear, what have you achieved? What are you proud of? So that I can give some shout outs at the end of the Tough Girl podcast episodes, because it is important to get that recognition out there. And I just love hearing from listeners about their challenges, their goals, and what they've done and what they've achieved. So, Catherine Harrison. So Catherine has shared this. So this year has been my least adventurous, but also one of my favourites. At the start of the year, my husband and I bought an old house knowing it needed full renovation. I knew it would mean cutting back on lots of other activities, but I've actually been really ready for that. Just saying to myself, do you know what? No, I cannot do everything time-wise, physically, financially, emotionally. I've just started running again this week and I'm hoping to be back in the hills next year. But for now, I'm really proud of being able to step back a bit and being okay with it. Maybe at the grand old age of 47, I'm learning how to manage my time and energy. So Catherine, thank you so much for sharing that. So there's a couple of things that really stand out for me. I think we do have these realizations, and I've certainly had it myself, where getting to that point when you realize that actually you can't do everything, time, physically, financially, emotionally. And sometimes things will need to take a back seat as you prioritize other areas. So, back at the start of 2025, you've bought an old house with your working on the renovation with your husband. And so actually doing the other physical things like running and heading out into the hills maybe just wasn't practical at that point of view. But to actually sort of step back, knowing that you'll be able to get back to into the future is really, really good. And I think it's actually really important. It's a lesson that I think I want to learn as well, learning how to manage my time and energy. Where do I need to prioritize? Where do I need to put more energy into things? Where do I need to pull back? Also being okay with resting and recovering and not beating myself up if I'm not achieving. And I think that can be difficult because I think we've almost grown up, or I certainly have, where it's almost like being productive, getting things done. And even like some of motivational quotes, you've only got one life, live it. And there's almost like this pressure to get out there and to do everything. But practicality wise, it's not really possible. Like time, like you said, time, physically, financially, emotionally. So I really did appreciate you sharing that. But really proud of you for taking that step back, being okay with it, managing your time and energy, and just prioritizing what needs to be done at this current moment in time. So congratulations on the house renovation. I can't even imagine how much work will be involved in that. I know that I've gone through some YouTube rabbit holes. I love watching like renovations, and I think it can be quite deceptive, especially when you watch like time-lapse renovations and you're like, oh, it's so easy. In 25 minutes, you've got a whole new house. I remember we had our kitchen done and I helped like mum and dad out with like stripping of the wallpaper and stuff. These things take hours, and the physicality of the work is not to be underestimated, but it's also an incredibly cool thing that you have done. I think it's definitely on my bucket list at some point in the future. I went down like the Portuguese rabbit hole of seeing, people buying these old properties and doing them up. And I think it would be super fun to do something fun, but also hard work as well. But again, do I have the time? Do I have the financial? Do I have the emotional availability to commit to something like that? So yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Really, really well done. And also, I suppose this is a message to listeners as well, to really have a think about what is it that you want to achieve in 2026, bearing in mind about the time, the physicality, the financial and emotional. What is the priority? What is number one? And everything can't be number one. You do have to prioritize. You do have to figure out what is most important. And it's okay for some things to take a back seat. It doesn't mean just because you've stopped doing something that you're never going to get back to it. So please be kind to yourself. Allow yourself to manage your energy levels, your other commitments, and to figure out, with what you've going on, what is the most important. Thank you so much for listening to the Tough Girl podcast. Thank you so much for supporting. If you'd like to support the work that I do, then please do visit Patreon, patreon.com/Tough Girl podcast. There's lots of resources on the website. There is huge amounts of information from all of our previous guests as well. There is information about the previous challenges and adventures that I've done. I don't really have any adventures and challenges planned yet for 2026. Doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. I'm not going to end up doing something, but I am also managing my time, my energy, my financials to try and figure out what can I do? What do I want to do? Where do I want to go? How can I make it work with the other different factors that I have going on? So do think about what it is that you would like to do. And that can be in any direction, whether it is studying, running, walking, house renovations, traveling. 2026 is the year of the horse. So, which is all about energy, freedom, movement, doing things your way, taking action. So it's going to be a great year and I'm excited to see what happens. Please do keep me updated with your plans and adventures. You can connect with me on Facebook, on Instagram at Tough Girl Challenges, or send me an email, sarah@toughgirlchallenges.com. All that's left for me to say is wherever you are, whatever you are doing, give it your all, give it 110%, get after it, go for it, believe in yourself, because I believe in you. Take care, lots of love, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.